name is Lauren and welcome to the Theoretical YouTube channel, where recently people have been asking me where I see myself in 10 years. I guess that's what I get for being a 20-something and just having the nerve to exist or whatever. But ignoring the unrelenting crawl of time, I recently watched all 3 movie adaptations of Freaky Friday in less than 24 hours. Not originally for a video, but you know, I don't pay a Disney Plus subscription for nothing. And then I wrote the script to make it a tax write-off. And you know, I realized something about myself after I finished gluing my ears back on after the 2018 musical version. In 10 years, I see myself producing the next adaptation of Freaky Friday. Or writing, or directing, or holding a boomstick while the PA yells at me to keep the mic out of the shot. I'll really settle for anything. But when the inevitable 4th, or technically 5th reboot of this franchise comes into fruition, I for one expect a phone call. And I am submitting my resume today. So unlike our typical book versus movie videos, I'm not just going to compare different aspects of these adaptations back to the original source material in order to determine the superior version, because the 1976 version is obviously the best. And no, I am not entertaining your millennial nostalgic or Lohan apologetic opinions at this juncture. What I really want to do is Frankenstein together the best aspects of each of these adaptations into an amalgamation of the overall best version of this story.
What a terrific idea.
What is the anatomy of the perfect Freaky Friday movie, and can such a thing exist? Yes, it can. And who better to dissect it all than someone who is currently too old to relate to the angsty teenagers, but also too young to be filled with a lifetime of regret like the mother characters. I truly am a third-party source of objective truth. Anyway, what is Freaky Friday? Freaky Friday is a particular brand of the popular subgenre of body swap stories, specifically between a mother and her teenage daughter. This results in a story thematically about learning to appreciate the difficulties and nuances each role experiences in her daily life, and that the grass is not greener on the other side of the space-time continuum. For this video, we will be analyzing the original book, Freaky Friday, and then 3 official film adaptations from 1976, 2003, and 2018. And I will be excluding other popular body swap type stories like 18 Again or even the 2020 movie Freaky, because while they might share similar plots and features, they also lack the true heart, through lines, and overall messaging of the Freaky Friday TM brand. I will also be excluding Disney's 1995 made-for-TV adaptation of the story solely because it's not currently available on any major streaming platforms, and so the only way I'd be able to watch it would be through piracy. And that's not a tax write-off. So, Freaky Friday is a 1972 novel by author Mary Rogers about a teenage girl named Annabelle Andrews who inexplicably one day wakes up in her mother's body, and it's revealed at the end of the book that it was actually her mother, Ellen, who purposely switched their bodies in order to teach her daughter life lessons. How did Ellen magically do this? Well, and I quote, "I haven't the foggiest notion, and she says she'll never tell me. Isn't that annoying?" So the main reason I bring this up is that the book is told entirely through the perspective of Annabelle living the day in her mother's body and experiencing those associated challenges. It is only in film adaptations that we ever see the mother struggle to get through the day in a teenager's body. More on this a bit later. The plot of the book is very episodic in nature, with Annabelle struggling to get through the day with stuff like chores, errands, meetings, etc. All culminating in one big event at the end of the day, in this case a dinner party for her father's business partners held at their home. Each movie subsequently follows a very similar episodic plot, featuring repeated elements like a laundry scene, picking up her little brother from school, going to a parent-teacher conference, a makeover, dealing with a love interest in some way, and the big event at the end of the day. In 1976, it was an aquacade water ski demonstration / police car chase, and in 2003, it was the mother's wedding / a rock concert audition. And in 2018, it was the mother's self-catered wedding / a really dumb scavenger hunt. Then of course, either at or just before the big event, we have the moment where mother and daughter finally switch back into their own bodies. And they also acknowledge that neither character really has a better life and that they should understand each other's struggles with better communication and empathy. But while we're talking about plot, I think the #1 difference between each of these adaptations is how they deal with the main concept for the story. By which I mean that every time this novel is adapted, the mechanism for the body switch becomes needlessly more complicated. For example, the mother in the book makes the switch overnight through unknown means, and how it happened is not relevant to the story. In the 70s film, both mother and daughter just happen to say, "I wish I could switch places with her for just one day," at the exact same time.
I wish I could switch places with her for just one day.
And at the end of the film, they undo the switch on accident by saying, "I wish I had my body back," in a very similar coincidence.
I wish I had my own body back! Right body, wrong place!
How this happened is never really explained, nor is it ever questioned, meaning that the mechanism for the actual body switch is still not relevant to the plot. This is where the 2000s film takes a big swing in the other direction by introducing the idea that the characters need to undo the switch on purpose themselves. In this adaptation, mother and daughter go to a Chinese restaurant, have a loud fight in front of everyone, which is overheard by the mother of the restaurant's owner. She then corners them and gives them each a fortune cookie with a riddle about empathy, which actually serves as a curse when they read it out loud.
A journey soon begins, its prize reflected in another's eyes.
When what you see is what you lack,
Then selfless love will change you back.
Whatever.
An earthquake no one else can feel occurs. And then the next morning they wake up in each other's bodies and spend the rest of the movie trying to figure out how to switch back.
I think you know exactly what we're talking about.
Let's hit her.
Which is by solving the riddle and having a true moment of empathy for one another.
You find the answer in each other. When the fortune come true, then you go back, okay? No big deal.
Like I said, these plots get way more complicated real fast. So besides being borderline racist for the early 2000s...
What did you say? Oh, she's crazy.
This is the first time where mother and daughter repeatedly interact with each other throughout the day. Unlike the book and the earlier adaptation, they're actually together for the swap, then break off into mini missions, reunite, break off again, and repeat as necessary, before they come together for one final time at the big event at the end of the film. In the 70s film, the characters don't even see each other until they're already switched back into their original bodies. This new story structure is carried over into the 2018 adaptation where... Hold on, let me check my notes here. They begin the film arguing over an hourglass gifted to the daughter by her late father, and mid-musical number are switched into each other's bodies via magic smoke while singing the words, "Just one day." Okay, got it. Then they immediately break the hourglass, which shouldn't be a problem because it was actually part of a set of two, one given to the daughter and one to the mother.
We totally broke a magic hourglass.
I highly doubt that it's magic. Okay.
But the mother sold hers to a pawn shop after her husband passed away, so they make a plan to try and find it and buy it back. But it turns out that the pawn shop went out of business and all their merchandise was distributed to the dozens of other antique shops throughout the city, and they need to find the item and... Oh no, they need to get the item on a scavenger hunt list to force unsuspecting teenagers to hunt it down for them. That makes sense. They eventually find it in a clock store. Great. Then they try to use it to switch back literally minutes before the mother's wedding by singing a reprise of the original song, but it doesn't work. That's not so great. Then they walk down the aisle still with the hourglass for some reason, and then they say they love each other, yada yada yada. The hourglass glows again. They sing a reprise of the reprise that we just heard. No one reacts to the magic glowing hourglass. They switch back, bing bang boom, the movie ends. See what I mean? It's not that the more complicated plots are exactly worse per se, but having a more complicated mechanism for the switch, whether that's fortune cookies or a magic hourglass, takes up more space in the story. Room that could be spent developing characters or ramping up the comedic hijinks. I think this is the greatest strength of the original film. Like the book, because it takes itself so anti-seriously, it doesn't waste time trying to justify the magic systems at play, and so it ends up the funniest of the adaptations.
What is this
It's your usual rum raisin banana split breakfast.
Figures.
Like, you would think that the musical one would be the most absurd in tone, but actually that's the one that's constantly trying to ground the story in depressing overtones. Like having an entire musical number about how parents are obligated to lie to their kids, specifically about not dying or abandoning you after having a terminal illness diagnosis.
They'll hold you and tell you they love and they care, but they lie when they tell you they'll always be there.
That's pretty dark for a fun Disney body switching movie. Can we go back to the laundry scene? Look at the soapy dog! Aw, he's so cute. This might just come down to genre preference, but seeing as each of these films are approximately the same runtime, I far prefer the one that uses that time to develop characters. On the other hand, I do think that the Lindsay Lohan version does strike a much better balance between absurdity and grounding. And just like it was a great decision to show the switch from both perspectives, it's also really cool to see the characters interact with each other in the wrong bodies. There is a lot of comedic potential that goes untapped in the 1970s version because mother and daughter don't reunite until the end. That being said, I do still think that the Lohan version skews too heavily into the complicated mechanism for my personal taste. Speaking of Lindsay Lohan, let's talk about the characters in this film and the actresses who play them. I turned the brightness down on my camera and now I no longer look like a ghost. Let's start with the differences between each of the daughters. We had Annabelle Andrews, played by a young Jodie Foster, Anna Coleman, played by Lindsay Lohan, and Ellie Blake, played by Cozy Zusseldorf. For future reference, each of their mothers, respectively, were named Ellen, Tess, and Catherine, but we'll get to their actresses in a bit. Annabelle, Anna, and Ellie are each very similar characters with slight differences in age and personality. Anna is the oldest, at least old enough to have her driver's permit, Annabelle is the youngest at 13, and Ellie is somewhere in the middle. All three are messy, mildly rebellious, struggling in school, and interested in a boy who either hates them or could care less that they exist. They also each have a particular interest in an extracurricular activity. For Annabelle, it's field hockey and water skiing. For Anna, it's playing music with her shockingly good garage band. And for Ellie, it's a scavenger hunt. Not scavenger hunts in general, but just one particular hunt that everyone in her high school does every year, which doesn't make it a very special interest, does it? Anyway, who's the best character? For me, I'm split between Anna and Annabelle because they each ooze with personality that Ellie fails to get across. I understand that for most of the film she spends the runtime in a different body, but in every other adaptation the switch works because we already have such a clear picture of her behavior and attitude.
Shut up!
But Ellie and Catherine and Ellie's body behave so similarly that there's not much comedy or character work for the younger actress to pull off. I don't know if this is a writing issue or an acting one, but either way, this is the blandest version of the character and the only one who doesn't feel iconic to me in any way. However, the one thing that Ellie shares in particular with Anna and not Annabelle is the whole dead dad thing, and actively processing her complex emotions around her mother's wedding on screen. These story beats in the 2018 version are pretty much directly ripped from the 2003 movie, but done messily and with less nuance. So Anna's character development is done way more convincingly than Ellie's, and I really like that her one true moment of empathy is accepting her mother's happiness. It's extremely sweet and serves as a strong, relatable core for a movie whose overall plot is magically fantastical. On the other hand, Annabelle is such a great kid character. Even before Jodie Foster is playing an adult's mind in a child's body, she delivers her lines with this dry, sardonic wit that makes her immediately endearing and sympathetic.
And your bed. That's made, right?
Oh, darn, I forgot, Mom. It just slipped through my mind. I got a lot of things to think about now.
On the other hand, this could be seen as a problem in itself. If Annabelle was already so precocious, then we run into the same issue of having trouble distinguishing the performance before and after the switch. I do think that Jodie Foster pulls it off much better than Cozy Dusseldorf. In fact, I think hers is the best performance out of any of the daughters. But Anna is written with the most diversity in personality from her mother, even if Lohan's performance is technically weaker. I'm not saying it's bad, I just think that when she plays the adult in a kid's body, it's less convincing than when she just plays the kid straight.
I beg your pardon?
Unlike Foster, who pulls off both seamlessly. I mean, only one of these performances was actually nominated for an Oscar, and it wasn't Dusseldorf's.
Your body, our bodies, are beautiful.
All of which is to say that in our hypothetical fourth reboot in this franchise, in an ideal world we would write the daughter with the depth and nuance of Anna, but cast an actress with the skill of Annabelle. Moving on to the mother. You might already know that Tess Coleman was famously played by Jamie Lee Curtis, but Ellen Andrews was played by Barbara Harris, and Catherine Blake was played by Heidi Blickenstaff. Why does everyone involved in the 2018 production sound like they were in a terrible witness protection program? Anyway, my biggest problem with the later mother characters is that they went and gave her a job. Okay, hold on, no one screenshot the captions on that last one. Let me explain. In both the book and the original film, Ellen is a stay-at-home mom, which makes it much more believable that Annabelle thinks her mother's life is so easy. She thinks all her mother does is do a few chores and then flick through the TV all day. She can do that no problem. But even when the mother characters are given full-on careers in the later films, this particular plot point never changes. I think the worst offender here is the 2003 film, where Dr. Tess Coleman is a semi-famous and still practicing psychiatrist on a press tour for her recently published book and planning her wedding in the same week. And yet Anna still thinks her school life is way more complicated.
Oh, honey, you need a serious and bracing reality check if you think my life is perfect.
Catherine also works full-time with her small catering business and is attempting to get published in a national home life magazine by catering and decorating her own wedding. And if she fails, the bank will repossess her house. So, no pressure.
If this story does not happen, we could lose our house.
Again, can we go back to the laundry scene? Why is this movie so dark? Character-wise, I think that Catherine is the weakest. Just like Ellie, after the body swap, her personality wasn't strong enough to really shine through. But between Tess and Ellen, I'm super torn. I don't even know which performance I liked more. Jamie Lee Curtis stands out from this film for doing some really strong physical comedy and truly embodying the teenage character that Lohan established. But Barbara Harris also does an amazing job at playing a kid. She has all of these mannerisms to distinguish between Ellen and Annabelle that are so subtle but also really effective. And funny. Both actresses are hilarious in their films because they fully commit to the bit.
All right, I'm great.
It is totally believable that they have each been possessed by a younger character hijacking their bodies. Harris was also nominated for an Oscar for her performance of Ellen Andrews, but I think that Curtis's is the one that has stood the test of time.
Oh, I'm like the Crypt Keeper!
Okay, that's enough.
I'll let you decide whether you like the elegance of the 70s or the brashness of the early 2000s more, but I really think that you could write either of these characters into our hypothetical script and get an instant hit. Maybe I'll tip it towards Ellen because she still manages to teach her daughter life lessons without the life that is technically more complicated on paper. And again, I prefer Foster's performance of the mother significantly more than Lohan's. It's just more believable.
Stop it!
Is there an ice cream truck? It's literally 47 degrees outside today. And raining. Anyway, what's next? Let's talk about the love interest that I briefly mentioned earlier. And yeah, here's another thing that the 2018 version managed to completely screw up, and this time they made it super creepy. Every version of the story gives the daughter a crush. Annabelle has a crush on Boris, a boy her age. Anna has a crush on Jake, a TA in her class, but I can't tell if he's still in high school, and Ellie has a crush on Adam, a boy her age. Frankly, Jake's questionable age, also a little creepy. So the problem here is how those crushes are either reciprocated or rebuffed at different times. Boris actually starts out the story hating Annabelle because she cracked his head open with a shovel when they were kids. but actually grows close with her in her mother's body as she tries to convince him that Annabelle has changed. They go down a brief if I were only 10 years older plotline with Boris, but he never shows any real romantic attention to who he believes is Ellen. On the other hand, Jake initially has a crush on Anna, but then loses it when he interacts with Tess in Anna's body, when he doesn't think that they have any interests or values in common. But when Anna pulls an Annabelle and hangs out with him in her mother's body, he develops a full-on crush on who he believes is Tess.
Give me a sign! Hit me, baby!
And he does not care that she is way too old for him, but it's mostly played for comedy or as an obstacle that they need to overcome.
I just want to talk to your mom.
Are you insane?
I know I am.
And he winds up with Anna proper in the end. But in 2018, they make the baffling decision to have Catherine, in her daughter's body, develop her own crush on Adam due to teenage hormones. Which is gross and did not deserve a musical number.
Oh, biology, what have you done to me?
And is thankfully not explored or reciprocated until Ellie is back in her own body. But my emotional damage has yet to be healed. Anyway, if we keep the love interest plot, I think that we should lean 70s here, so that we cut out the awkward age difference in Jake's character and the predatory nature of the Adam plot. Or, we could just cut it all together if we really want to play it safe. But okay, I don't want to give you the impression that there's nothing we can steal, adapt from the 2018 version.
I am very disappointed.
Are you?
Disappointed in myself.
I actually think there's something that it does better than any other film and the book altogether. And that's one, how they handle the little brother's arc, and two, how they handle consequences altogether. In every version of Freaky Friday, there is a younger brother character who doesn't get along with the daughter. In both the book and the first film, his name is Apeface. Ben. In the 2000s, it's Harry, and in 2018, it's Fletcher. And while it is consistent that one of the lessons the daughter has to learn in her time in her mother's body is how to appreciate a relationship with the younger brother that she thought she hated, the reason they don't get along varies on adaptation. In both the book and the 70s version, Annabelle doesn't get along with Ben because she's messy and he's clean. She thinks that their parents see him as the golden child, and she's jealous of that attention. But upon learning that Ben actually looks up to her and has tried to follow in her messy ways, but just can't defy his true clean nature due to outside circumstances like a vindictive maid, she softens up and is kinder to him even after she gets her own body back. And in a 180-degree turn, Anna hates Harry because Harry's a little brat who deserves it. His main character introduction is playing the drums on a vintage guitar their late father gave Anna to make her mad.
Why? Would you leave your brother alone?
See? She always starts it.
Obviously, she gets in trouble for retaliating, and then tension continues to mount between Anna, Harry, and Tess, who has to get involved and hold someone accountable. Later on, we learn that Harry, too, actually likes his older sister, but unlike Ben, expresses his love through fighting because it's fun.
Well, that's why I like her.
Well, why not?
Because we have too much fun fighting.
Anna realizes that she enjoys fighting with him too, and now we, the audience, are led to believe that their relationship will continue to look like constant bickering, but without any true malice at the heart of it. I don't like either of these two younger brother characters, because neither of them feel real to me. One is a perfect angel, which if you've ever had a little brother you know is inherently a myth, and the other is just generally dislikable. I know that they're trying to give Harry some nuance later on in the film, but his opening actions are just so irredeemable that then his secret confession of love and affection for Anna just rings hollow for me.
I need my door! You give me that door, or I will kill myself!
Oh, can I watch?
Harry!
Shut up!
Great man, you enjoy our fights. I don't, which is why I think that Fletcher is the best version of the little brother. Because Ellie basically hates him for no reason other than his existence as a full person outside of her perception of the world. Fletcher's main character trait is his love for magic and dream of one day having his own Las Vegas show, a hobby that Ellie finds completely pointless.
The power of magic!
Ew. too.
I would argue that actually having a hobby makes Fletcher an inherently more interesting character than Ellie, but I digress. But unlike Anna and Annabelle, who learn that their brothers secretly love them, I think I like the Fletcher storyline because it forces Ellie to acknowledge that she secretly loves him first. Which ties into my second point about consequences. Because of the whole song about how parents are obligated to lie to their kids thing, Fletcher begins to think that his mother is a terrible parent. I wonder why. And so he runs away and makes it as far as the bus station before Adam finds him and brings him home. But in the meantime, the Blake family is in total panic mode, calling the police because Ellie accidentally convinced her brother to give up on the concept of having a family. In this scene, the police try to ask questions about Fletcher to who they think is his mother, but obviously Ellie doesn't know the answers because she's never paid much attention to him. And in this moment, we see that Ellie is ravished by guilt, not just because it is her fault that she lost him while he was her responsibility, but because the person she loves is gone and she didn't appreciate him enough while he was here in order to answer the questions to help get him back. Everything is alright in the end. Literally minutes later, Fletcher is returned home. But the emotional consequences in this scene and this movie have lasting impact. The other weirdly deep moment is when the hourglass doesn't work and both Ellie and Catherine are forced to imagine what will happen now.
I didn't even get to see life flash before my eyes. It just went away.
Now that Ellie has missed the fleeting joys of youth, and Catherine will have to go through its trials once more.
There's this whole long life I'll never live, my college years and more.
And all that I'll go through again that hurt so much before.
Just one day has become the rest of their lives. And the answer they come to is that there is no solution. As much as they desperately want to try and find a silver lining, there is no way to make this situation all right. Again, everything actually is alright in the next scene where the hourglass just decides that it didn't like how they said I love you the first time.
We learned important things.
Blah, 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 so many things. And I walked inside your shoes and said I love you.
But in this moment, the emotional weight of the scene is crushing. There is no point in the other Freaky Friday films where I was even remotely convinced that maybe mother and daughter wouldn't switch back. But something about the weirdly dark tone of the 2018 film almost had me think this was the direction it was going to take. Am I suggesting that our theoretical adaptation in 10 years should make the swap permanent? Absolutely not. That is a decision based on shock value and not emotional catharsis. But what I am saying is that if we are aiming for a good balance between the absurdly comic elements and the more grounded plot, it is important to make sure that our characters' actions feel like they have real consequence. Some emotional development that we hope lasts longer than the film's credits. There is one last thing that I want to address before we sum up the perfect Freaky Friday template. While they all are comedies, each of these films is a slightly different flavor or sub-genre of film. One is a wacky comedy in the style of a screwball without any of the romantic genre markers. One is a pastiche of the 90s and early 2000s coming-of-age film, but with a tonally dissonant message about how to hold on to your youth as long as possible and savor it. And one is a Disney Channel original movie built on the backs of High School Musical, Lemonade Mouth, and Girl vs. Monster. And each film is strongest where it leans in and adapts the original source material to fit the structure its genre best suggests. And I don't know what comedies the market will be desperate for in the next 10 years, but when those big studio heads come a-knockin', I recommend letting the plot be episodic and flow according to specific genre demands. Having a simple magic story catalyst so that we have more time to develop characters and comedic sequences. Finding a good balance between being absurd and emotionally relatable. Giving our characters room to feel consequence. Making the daughter a charismatic and interesting personality who clashes with her mother based on a sense of individuality. Making the mother sympathetic but not overworked. And her main struggle should still be timely and evolve based on the parenting expectations of the day. Making the love interest age appropriate. Making the brother a whole character, not just a foil for the daughter or an obstacle for the plot. And I didn't mention it before, but the mild body horror elements in the later films is actually more interesting than in the 70s where the characters prefer their new bodies. It's not necessary to iterate how mature the mother is. If we have a makeover scene, let's do the mother again. Both the book in the 70s do the daughter, and it sits with me kind of weird. We can keep the dead dad plotline, but only if we drop the wedding. That has been done to death at this point. If we do it again, it's not gonna say anything new. And above all else, let's keep that runtime to a crisp 90 minutes. This is not a story that takes 2 hours to tell. It is a tiny book, after all. Here's the other best quote in the book. He lives in our building. He is beautiful and I love him. And he is standing outside our door right this minute with a spaghetti sieve. And how am I supposed to handle the situation, I asked myself. With charm and sophistication, I answered myself. And with that, I hid the bowl of macaroni in a wastebasket and flung open the door. I also like, my name is Annabelle Andrews. No middle name. I don't even have a nickname. I've been trying to get them to call me Bubbles at school, but it doesn't seem to catch on. Anyway, I don't usually dissect book-to-movie adaptations and then stitch them together in a Frankenstein-esque experiment, but if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content nothing like this. I will probably never reference Freaky Friday again. Except in 10 years when I finally get to hold that boom pole, and then nobody will ever be able to get me to stop talking about it at family get-togethers. You can also follow us on Twitter at theory_central in order to switch bodies with Elon Musk. Just so you know, the same thing happens if you unfollow us too. And consider supporting us on Patreon, like the incredible David W. and Alex DoQuinto, who I don't think are mother and daughter, but that would literally be the biggest plot twist of them all. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you suggest that I watch the 1995 version in the comment section down below, I will report you to the FBI, you scummy internet pariah. And I'll see you later.
I'd like to be you for a day. I'd like to be you for a day.
Hit me!